So I was head of engineering. Before that, I'd ran manufacturing facilities for GSK for the entire part of my career. So I stand in front of you here, proudly not an environmentalist. I have no environmental background whatsoever. So the question is, why was I asked to lead a small group by our CEO to refresh GSK's environmental sustainability strategy? And I think it's because our CEO, who's a man of great insight, realised that he needed to bring people from the business to develop a strategy rather than people who have embedded in their blood the values of sustainability. And I think that might be one interesting first point about how do you persuade the board. You don't necessarily put an environmentalist in front of them. So that's a bit about why I think I was asked with a team to deliver this. If I hop right to the end, what was the end result? Well, we managed to get our board to approve and go public with a revised strategy on environmental sustainability about a year ago. And that strategy was based on Scope 3 reduction targets for carbon, value chain reduction targets for water, and targets to go zero to landfill for waste. So those were the three main themes. We've launched it externally and it's been pretty well received. So that bit went well. So the question is, how can you move a board to accept that kind of strategy? How can you persuade them? And I would add here, I'm not an expert. This is just something we did. I'm not saying I could replicate this in any of your businesses. This is just the approach we took. So what we felt that if you're going to persuade a board, the thing they're going to be most interested in is, does this make strategic sense? What's the strategy? And if you're going to persuade a board of strategy, the way we looked at it would be, well, the first thing we need to do is actually have a process for developing that strategy. Once we've got the process, we then actually, if we're going to build a good strategy, we're going to need to help people understand what's the true context around that strategy, both for the business and the wider context. When you've got those two bits sorted, we can then bring the board some content. And so that's classic MBA speak, isn't it? Strategy, process, context and content. But then the board's going to say, okay, yeah, but come on, how are you going to deliver it? So you needed also to persuade them around execution. So looking at the first of those issues, what was the process we decided to put around this? Well, the first thing we felt is that we needed a small team to pull the strategy together in a concentrated period of time, about 4 months. And the group we pulled together was four or five people from very diverse parts of our business. And also from diverse cultures, because we have to recognise that, like most of you here, we're a global company. The issues are global. We wanted to bring different cultural perspectives and different business perspectives. We deliberately had no policy wonks on that group. So with no one that was embedded in setting sustainability strategy previously in GSK, it was a fresh result, a fresh look. The other thing that we wanted to do as part of the process was make sure that we had a clear end point to commit to. So the key part of the process was going to be a report back to the board with the clear intent that was a recommendation for approval. And then we had a couple of rules around the process. The first is that it was going to be a data rational process, not one affected by sentiment or personal intuition. And if I have one first personal insight, it's that the trouble with sustainability is everyone's got either a personal instinct or intuition about what the right thing is to do. And when you grind the numbers, 9 times out of 10 it's wrong, and that's myself included. And the other thing is we often, in various ways, respond emotionally. So I can share an anecdote that a few years ago when sustainability was discussed inside my company, one of the key recommendations should be that the sales reps should switch to Toyota Priuses. Not a fundamental change in an organisation's footprint, I would suggest. And the other key part of the process is we wanted to make sure that what we did was benchmarked against what we felt were the very best in the business and in businesses around the world were doing in this area. So that's kind of a bit about the process, but then you have to get down into what's the context and what's the context for your own business. And I think one of the things that was perhaps going around our company, not necessarily with the CEO, but he's not the board, there are other people on the board, is that, look, we're a healthcare company. Health trumps planet. Yeah? You know, if you're ill, we all individually and personally want to be made well, and on top of that, we can't be that significant. Well, when we cut the numbers, we did some work on footprinting. You discover that actually healthcare does have a significant carbon footprint. We've estimated that the footprint of healthcare is roughly the same as the footprint of an average-sized European country. So it's not trivial. So the first argument we made is you can't just opt out of the agenda. Our business has an impact and our industry has an impact. One of the other issues is that I think there are two lenses that we look at sustainability through. We look at it from the lens that we do genuinely care about the planet and we want to protect the planet, and at the same time we look at it through a lens when we're in business, that we work in businesses and those businesses need to make a profit and provide things that people want or need. So how did we square that circle? Well, interestingly, we went to our corporate mission. Our corporate mission is to help people do more, feel better, and live longer. So our corporate mission is to put more people on the planet, allow them to use more resource, yeah, and to do it for an increased period of time. But that's a wonderful thing. Yeah, that is not a bad thing. That's a wonderful thing. But the context that you can get across the board is therefore, unless you can have a goal to change direction and create that same end result, but with less resource, you haven't got a sustainability strategy that lines up to your mission. So the context was about bringing the things together. The other message around context we wanted to get across was, look, this is not vanilla. We might come up with some high-level targets, but how our R&D departments or businesses respond to that challenge, how our commercial businesses respond to that challenge, and how our manufacturing businesses respond will be different. It's got to line up to an overarching strategy, but we've also got to give those businesses their own thinking space to figure out how they'll go about making their specific contribution, each in their own way. And I suppose the last thing we were trying to put around context for the board was that this is not about wearing a hair shirt. Yeah, you know, I can remember my daughter, when I used to run a chemical factory, going, oh, Dad, you just run a dirty chemical factory. And I used to say, Sarah, it makes product that employs people, that cures them when they're ill and brings prosperity to the economy, and you make it sound like a bad thing. So there's a whole point that if you're a board, yeah, they're doing a very important thing. They're bringing value to shareholders, shared value to stakeholders. We wanted to position the sustainability strategy as something that was a source of opportunity. So we worked hard to show that if you did things right in the area of sustainability, you can actually increase revenue streams, reduce cost, and build much greater trust with your patients, your customers, and your government stakeholders. So that was the context, and then we moved on to talking to the board about the content. We began with a very clear message, and that clear message was there are no silver bullets in this. We're not coming to you to say either with a tough decision, which is part with a lot of money and you can solve this problem, so a lot of money, but a clear decision to make. We're coming to say this is something that takes many years and there will be no one single thing that's going to solve this problem or meet your ambition. The next thing we tried to do was keep it simple. I mean, I have to say, Ian, having come into this area, sometimes we just make things too complicated. Carbon footprints, life cycle assessments, green water, blue water, brown water, I just get lost. So we tried to keep it really simple and just focus on three things: carbon, water, waste. We've got plenty of smart people in our organisations can reinterpret that and the targets in what it means in their part of the business, but give the board, well, we decided, give the board something easy to understand but still authentic. So that framework, carbon, water and waste, that was the overarching framework. But it's easy to have a framework. We then had to go away and establish what we thought would be for the business stretching but realistic targets. So there was work done behind that said, how much would this cost to achieve? What benefits would it deliver? We went out into the businesses to corroborate that. So we came to the board with some targets, but also with a proposal on, if you adopt this strategy and we hit these targets, we think you will save roughly this amount of money. So we've got the board kind of interested, because we've not given them any bad news, we've given them an opportunity. But then the last part, which I think is the most important, is if you really want to persuade our board, you need to say, how are you going to deliver? Great strategy, but how are you going to deliver? And then the board has a role in that. And the first part of that role is that if you want to deliver a strategy, you do need some resource. So the first thing we started with was getting the board to commit with a clear proposal. This is the resource we think we'll need to kickstart things, both financial and also in terms of forming a small team. Tick that. We then said, well, what you really need to do to achieve engagement at the highest level in the organisation is put governance around this. So we got the board to commit to putting in clear levels of governance and steering, so a senior leader group which provides not only performance tracking but assessment of how we best deploy resource across the business and ensures that we're innovating as we move towards hitting our targets. And I think the last thing is we did talk to the board about engagement. And the difficulty I have with that word is I just don't really know what it means. It kind of saves me trying to articulate something really difficult. So we thought about it quite a lot, and we think that engagement works in tiers. So how you actually persuade and work with senior leaders and help them understand what they need to do to try and understand how sustainability can deliver value for their business is very different to how you want to get the best out of the people already working in the field within your business. And that's very different to how you want to interact with guys and girls out there selling your product and guys and girls doing research and development. So we came with a proposal for a more segmented way of engaging or working with people inside our business. So it wasn't, I'll say it again, it wasn't vanilla. And perfectly, I've got a red light that tells me I'm about at the end, which is right. So just to remind you, how did we persuade our board? Well, we weren't a team made up of environmental experts. In fact, perhaps ashamedly, in retrospect, we were quite the opposite. We came to the board with a process, with some context and content, and then a proposal on, and this is what you would need to do if you want to deliver. So that was my personal story. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.